Welcome everyone to the UC Disparities Community Catalyst Awards webinar. Before we get started, let me introduce Melody Gonzalez, who is a professional interpreter and will share a bit about language justice and the bilingual format of our webinar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melody Gonzalez, and I'm a community interpreter, and I'm honored to be a bridge for this webinar. And by offering language interpretation, we are committing to language justice, the human right to express ourselves in the language or communication mode that is most comfortable, and the one that we feel most free and to participate fully, understand, learn, dialogue, question, propose, transform, build, and dream. All of us are responsible for creating an effective language justice space by taking your time to speak clearly and at a moderate pace, especially if reading a written text, enunciating any names, explaining acronyms, and repeating numbers and data, for example. If you are bilingual, you have the option to select the language channel you want to listen to or speak in, or not select any. And you may change it at any moment, but remember to speak in the language of the language channel you are in at any given moment, and please do not switch languages mid-sentences. I am now going to repeat this information in Spanish, so I'm going to go to the Spanish channel just to repeat this information so that it is recorded in the, it's part of the recording, so just give me one moment. Interpretación de idiomas, nos estamos comprometiendo a la justicia del lenguaje, el derecho humano de expresarnos en el lenguaje o modo de comunicación que sea más cómodo y en el que más nos sentimos libres para participar de manera plena, para comprender, dialogar, cuestionar, proponer, transformar, construir y soñar. Todas las personas aquí presentes somos responsables por crear un espacio de justicia del lenguaje efectivo. Eso significa tomar nuestro tiempo para hablar de manera clara y moderada, especialmente si estamos leyendo texto escrito, enunciar cualquier nombre y explicar los acrónimos y repetir nombres y datos, por ejemplo. Si son personas bilingües, tienen la opción de seleccionar el canal de idioma en el que quieren escuchar y hablar o no seleccionar ninguno de los dos. Y lo pueden cambiar en cualquier momento, solo recordar hablar en el idioma del canal que han elegido y favor de no cambiar de idioma en media oración. Okay, and now we can continue. Ahora podemos continuar.
Thank you, Melody. Again, welcome to the UC End Disparities webinar that is focused on providing more information about the Community Catalyst Award, which was recently announced and released. Next slide, please. So during this webinar, we will share a little bit about the UC End Disparities project and several details about the Community Catalyst Award. And then we will address any questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please.
UC End Disparities stands for UCLA, UCI, Center for Eliminating Cardiometabolic Disparities in Multi-Ethnic Populations. The center focuses on multi-level community academic partnerships and approaches community partnered approaches to addressing inequities in conditions such as high blood pressure, stroke, and diabetes, and complications of these conditions, such as vascular disease and kidney disease for residents of Los Angeles County and Orange County. And disparities includes a focus on Latino, Black, Asian, Pacific Islander, and American Indian communities who have had some of the highest rates of cardiovascular and metabolic factors. This initiative is funded by the National Institute of Health, or the NIH. Community Catalyst Awards are intended to support community organizations working to promote health equity in cardiovascular and metabolic conditions for Los Angeles and/or Orange County communities. We plan to award up to 4 Catalyst Awards of $10,000 each, inclusive of indirect costs. Who is eligible to apply for a Community Catalyst Award? In line with the goals of End Disparities, we're looking to support community-based organizations that work with populations in Los Angeles County or Orange County. And we are also looking to support organizations who work with populations who are disproportionately affected by cardiometabolic conditions. Funds may be used to support changes to or scaling up of ongoing projects and or new projects related to community capacity building and promoting cardiometabolic health.
You can submit applications of up to 2 pages long that include 3 sections. So first, please include your information as an applicant, such as your organization's name and the contact information for whom we should reach out to with questions or award information. Second, please include details about your project proposal. This includes, for example, a brief timeline of your project activities over the 1-year project, a brief high-level overview of your project activities, the community or communities who will be reached through this work, and the expected outcomes. So by the end of the Community Catalyst Award, what do you hope your organization will have achieved? What would that look like? How might you know that you have achieved those outcomes? For example, how might you know that you've achieved some, at least, of those outcomes? You do not need to propose an evaluation for your project activities, but please give us a sense of what you are expecting to achieve. Next slide, please. Please also include a budget. So this would involve a detailed budget proposal, such as a table that indicates the activities or expenses and their expected cost, such as personnel, time, or equipment, or travel. In the budget proposal, you would also include any indirect costs that your organization or fiscal sponsor includes. This would be part of the $10,000 budget. You will also need to include a budget justification that explains what each budget item includes and how you came to the calculations. For example, if you include staff time in the budget, then in the budget justification, you would note the role, describe their activities related to the project, and note how you arrived at the amount requested for their time. So you might say X hours during the project period. Please also include a very brief scope of work that describes the work that your organization will be doing at a high level. You can also include any internal forms that would be important to include related to the budget, such as a document indicating information about a fiscal sponsor for your organization or something else related to the budget. The internal form would not count against the page limit. Next slide, thank you. So please submit your full application to the following email address: enddisparities@mednet.ucla.edu. You can email your proposal as a Word document or as a PDF. Either are fine. And applications should be no more than 2 pages maximum. And any internal budget-related forms do not count against the page limit.
Shortly, we are going to open it up for questions, so feel free to type your questions into the chat, or you can email your questions to the same email provided earlier. Before we open it up for questions today, we want to provide you with a few more details. In terms of our timeline, we released the call for applications on June 21st. Applications are due by the end of the business day on July 20th. Awardees will be notified about the outcome of their proposal by August 5th. The earliest funding will be dispersed in September 2022, when organizations submit an invoice for their work conducted in the first 6 weeks of the funding period. We will also be providing you with a frequently asked questions, or FAQ, with additional information that we think may be helpful as you fill out your application. And lastly, we have provided a budget template. This is optional if your organization has an existing template that they prefer to use. That can be submitted with the award as well. And now we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Yelba. We are going to close by acknowledging. Oh, did you go over this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to go over just some general questions to review that we think might be helpful, and then we'll close. So the first question is, what is the funding time period? Awardees will have about 1 year or 12 months to spend the funds. What are our reporting requirements? So we will ask for your organization to share your work at UC and Disparities Retreat. The date will be determined at a later date. And you will also be asked to submit progress reports during different phases of the project. All of the required submissions will be detailed to the awardees. You may also be asked to participate in a small evaluation at the end of your award.
Thank you, Yelba. We are going to transition to closing. And before we do close, though, we are getting some good questions in the chat. So one question is, will awardees be required to do an IRB proposal or an institutional review board proposal? And that is not a requirement for this work. We are looking to support work that is the priority of community-based organizations who are in line with the goals of the Catalyst Award. You do not need to conduct research or evaluation as part of this proposal.
We have another really great question. Can money be used or funding be used for food at planned research training events? So funding can be used for food as long as it stays within our recommended ranges of how funding for food should be spent, and that will all be provided to you or to awardees once they are awarded the Catalyst Award.
Thank you. Any other questions before we close?
We have another question in the chat. Is it okay if our organization has a fiscal sponsor that is not in LA or Orange County?
That is a great question. And based on past experience, the answer is yes. The focus of the work needs to be in LA County or Orange County, and the fiscal sponsor can be outside of that region. Okay, any more questions before we begin to close? Really helpful questions. Thank you. Before we close the webinar, we'd like to thank several folks. Can you go to the next slide, please? We'd like to thank Melody Gonzalez for supporting us in practicing language justice and offering interpretation for today's webinar and for translating the grant information. And we also thank other members of the UC End Disparities Center and our funder, the National Institutes of Health. So thank you all, and this recording will be available on the UC End Disparities website.